change deal at COP21 in Paris are precariously hanging in a balance with only a day before the summit ends tomorrow.
A final draft agreement released last night continues to divide the talks and countries. The Group of 77 and China, boasting a membership of more than 130 countries, is one of the unhappy constituencies. The fundamental unresolved disputes are mainly over finance. Some say developed countries must pay.
But others say that the world has changed now. Emerging economies must also pay. There are also divisions about the limit to the rising global temperatures. The most vulnerable countries to climate change want them to be kept at 1.5 degrees Celsius, whilst others say it must be 2 degrees. Speculation is now rife that the conference will conclude with just a political commitment to this UN process, but not a legally binding agreement. Well, to tell us a little bit more, we're now joined live from Paris by our reporter Tammy Dixon, who's been following developments from there. Let's find out what ministers, if they're getting closer to a legally binding agreement. Tammy, thanks for joining us. So yesterday we got the draft and people have had time to look at it and debate it, and it seems that some people are reacting to it quite a bit.
Yeah, well, that's very true. Good afternoon, Peter. Indeed, it was a long night. Some people, they say that it was a long night of long knives because last night it was really difficult here, and they spent literally the whole night in the chambers of this conference, really trying to find, going through the draft line by line, ensuring that it does, agree with the demands that they've put forward. Even during the course of the day today, we've seen quite a lot of lobbying as well and meetings. Ministers are quite very busy trying to see if they can reach any compromises. We are told that tonight is going to be the same thing. They're still going to interrogate the draft, really trying to see if they can find each other, because the issues that are actually separating them are totally different and are very, very difficult. In fact, they're not just academic issues. These are political issues, and that's why they are so difficult. And in some cases, you are told that even if they do get maybe 60-70% in terms of coming closer to reaching an agreement, they have to go back and try to bring back the 40% that is still outside because of the nature of the negotiations, because they're using a consensus approach. They don't vote on issues, making it so very, very difficult to find an agreement. So it remains to be seen if really they will be able to have a legally binding agreement by tomorrow.
All right, I was just about to ask that actually. I mean, when this summit started, we had a record number of heads of state, and there seemed to be so much optimism that an agreement would be reached. If we go back to Durban already, we had optimism, and they thought Paris would be it. But, with just hours to go, it's unlikely that we'll get a binding agreement, a legal one.
Very, very unlikely, Peter. You are right. I mean, we are exactly at a point where we were 6 years ago. If you still remember when this meeting was held in Denmark, in the city of Copenhagen, the feeling was exactly as it is today. Right at the end of it, when everybody didn't expect, the conference or the summit just collapsed, and they went back with no deal whatsoever. Because what they're trying to do here, it's something that they wanted to do 6 years ago in Copenhagen, in Denmark. They couldn't. Those negotiations, they collapsed, and they had to be resuscitated 2 years later in Durban, as you correctly point out. And in Durban, they gave themselves 4 years to negotiate until they meet here in Paris to really try to find a deal. But now we are at a point again where we are realizing that they are still very far from actually reaching that legally binding agreement. What we are hearing now is that some of the difficult issues that they're battling with here are going to be deferred to the next COP, which is going to be held in Morocco next year, and then try to see if maybe when Africa hosts the COP22 next year, they won't be able to find that very difficult legally binding agreement that they're looking for. Peter?
All right, so that's where we're going to have to leave it. That's Tammy Dixon, who's at Le Bourget, where the Paris climate talks are taking place, and I'm sure that's a face that you're going to see quite a bit in the next 24 hours.